right. That's the basic decision making matrix. So at the bottom, generally, okay, guys, and this is not fixed, all right, but it's called, we're talking about general principles here. So there's nothing stopping your guy at the bottom from thinking about strategic stuff. And also, what's important with leadership is, you know, I had such a great mentor in my first job at Barlow World Logistics. I used to report directly to the GM as a student outside. And one of the things he always said to me, that's always stuck with me, is that he said, don't underestimate your people on the ground. Just because somebody is driving a forklift or is a sweeper at your factory doesn't mean he's not a church leader or community leader in his own community. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have anything of value, and doesn't mean just because maybe he didn't have the opportunities that you have had, doesn't mean that he doesn't have a solution. Okay, so I'm not saying you only at the bottom level, you only do day-to-day and routine things, but generally speaking, when you're at the bottom level, the lower grades, you've got a set task to do. All right. When we get to middle management, okay, so generally middle management is the interface between your executive and your bottom level, okay, and they essentially try and translate the vision of the executive down to the bottom level, whereby it makes sense to those people. Because often at the bottom level, you know, it's not the best skilled people sometimes. So it's management's job to translate generally complicated kind of executive decisions into meaningful day-to-day activities that make sense to your people at the bottom. Okay, so for example, let's say the executive comes up with a new strategy whereby we're moving to a new 3-shift system from a 2-shift system, and we're going to implement that over a 1-year period, and we're going to interface more with the 4PL and that sort of thing. Management will say, great, that makes, middle management will say that makes sense. Now, how do we actually translate this into meaningful activities so that the guy at the bottom is just not totally confused, and then the guy at the bottom will get his instruction, and he gets told, okay, at 8 o'clock you do this, at 10 o'clock you do this, at 12 o'clock you do this. If you think there's improvements, come back, you let me know and we'll do it, but for now this is the plan. Okay, and then right at the top, like I say, that's generally where you have your policy decisions, your long-term complex non-routine. Should we expand into Africa? Should we take a bet now and hedge on this opportunity of COVID, or should we wait and see it out? You know, it's generally the decisions that don't have clear-cut answers. It's the decisions that have a degree of risk. It's the decisions that you are paid to make, because if it goes wrong, it might be your job on the line. But that's why you pay the big executive salary, the 2 and 3 bar a year. All right, and I understand often I mean, I started on the floor, guys. I mean, one of the things my boss told me was spend time on the floor. And, you know, the perception on the floor is that executive management is very disconnected about what's happening on the ground. But to a degree, they should be. They shouldn't be too familiar and too involved, rather, with what's happening on the ground. That's not their job. Whoever's on the ground needs to run what's on the ground. Whoever's middle management needs to run middle management. Whoever's in charge of strategy needs to run strategy. Yes, you can have interplay, but people are employed to do roles. And sometimes things might not make sense to you. It's always good to question. You know, I definitely don't know everything. I always learn, and I often get challenged, and, you know, you reassess and then you realign. But yeah, generally your strategic management, your senior executives, they are involved and should be developing strategy, long-term thinking, long-term impact, complex, non-routine. That's what they are paid to do. That's what they should be doing, guiding the company forward. They shouldn't be worried about day-to-day efficiencies. It should be more your long-term efficiencies. And often I see this, especially in South Africa, you know, and I've been in many companies, is that your executive doesn't realize that. They get involved in the nitty-gritty. And if you're involved in the day-to-day, who's thinking